Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be here. It's a privilege to always get through the double-blind screening process. As much as I am heavily involved in Pydata, nobody knew I'd submitted this proposal, at least I don't think they did. And equally, thank you all for still being here. I know it's been a long conference. Hopefully this will be a relatively light and easygoing, but with some hardcore lessons learned. And I will forewarn you, I am going to try and do a live demo as part of this talk. So start praying to the demo gods for me now, please. So what are we going to cover? Obviously, this is not a tutorial. However, there is a full code base that I've opened up here, which you can download. You can therefore run it yourself, play with it, do whatever you want. Like I say, I will demo it towards the end. Fundamentally, first of all, hands up if you have heard of RAG. Keep your hand up if it's not red, amber, green. OK, how many of you have used RAG? How many of you have evaluated your RAG systems? How many of you know that you should have evaluated your RAG systems? OK, that's better. Right, OK. So some of this is about the principles around some of those things, but to make it a little bit more fun, I've kind of inverted the question a little bit, and you'll see as we go along. So why verify, not just answer? We're going to look about how you actually process, take in documents, take control of these systems. I'm kind of trying to lift us up from, if you like, those naive places where we've all probably experimented into what you can start doing and what you need to really think about. It'll build in, we're going to look at a variant of RAG in some respects called IRAG. Anybody heard of IRAG? Anybody heard of index RAG? Yeah, equally, actually, until a few weeks ago when I was refining how my system worked, I hadn't heard of the term IRAG, so we're all learning together. We'll go through the process of how this folded into also some live grading and LLM-as-Judge processes, and then, like I say, a live demo. So first up, yes, my name's Adam Hill. My LinkedIn is there if you really want it as the QR code. The really exciting news actually on these quadrants is how many of you have seen me speak before? So you've seen a version of this slide before, and there's always a point where I say, oh, and this is the blog that I need to refresh and update, and the website that's completely out of date. It's all been refreshed and updated this year, which means I now actually have no excuse for not writing content. So please go and maybe have a look, and hopefully there'll be some interesting things, because I'm trying to put up the things that I'm exploring in. So yeah, my day-to-day job is at ComplyAdvantage. I'll give a little bit more of an introduction to them shortly. DataKind, hopefully you've spotted here at the conference. I'm a long-standing volunteer with them, hugely passionate about their work. If you haven't spoken to them, you'll have to go and find them and look them up yourselves, but they are an amazing organization, and please do look them up. I very much buy into what Rachel Lee was talking about in her keynote of community and networking and collective support is how we all survive in this world of AI craziness and just as human beings. So I've long been an advocate, hence why I am a former Royal Society Entrepreneur in Residence. I am still a visiting researcher at the University of Southampton. I'm the founder and organizer of Pydata Southampton. I'm engaged with Pydata London. And the one shout out, as I said earlier on, is that the community exists because of those of us in the community. So please, where you can, everybody participate, whatever you can give, whether it's having a conversation with the person next to you that you don't know, that is enough to keep the community alive. So that's my sales pitch. Moving on to who I work for, because they've allowed me to come here today. ComplyAdvantage fundamentally is trying to combat and fight financial crime, or at least empower the organizations that need to be fighting financial crime to do so. If you're unaware, financial crime costs the world economy like $1 trillion plus a year based upon estimates. Money laundering, human trafficking, drug trafficking, all the bad things in the world, ultimately people do because there's money involved. And so you want to track and trace the bad actors. So at Comply, we have built a knowledge graph of financial bad actors. We're continually looking at how we improve and add intelligence and insight into that system. So we're using the latest tech as well as some of the oldest tech, whatever works to solve the problem that's in front of us. If you really want to hear about that aspect, I highly encourage you to go to the YouTube video of last year's Pydata talk, where you can therefore hear all about the adverse media pipeline that we built with LLMs. So I don't actually want that to play. So most RAG systems that any of you have experimented and come across, they answer questions for you. What they don't do is verify the answers they've given you. So how many of you have gone with the classic of, I'm going to upload a PDF document into my chat window and then I'm going to ask questions of it? Cool. How many of you checked the document afterwards to see if it gave you the right answer? Not as many of you as probably should have done. And I mean, this is the general problem we have in how do we trust these systems? Because we know AI hallucinates. AI does crazy stuff. I mean, it's interesting. Somebody commented recently, we all worry about hallucination. And ironically, that is actually the superpower of LLMs. They generate new things when you give them a gap in information. That's what they're designed for, and that's what we're all worried about, is that they fill in the blank when we didn't explicitly tell them what was meant to be in the blank. So nothing checks. There's no score, there's no signal, there's proof. So what I've done this time around is I've now flipped it. What I'm actually using is the LLM to evaluate understanding of people. So I'm using the LLM to actually go and read the document and generate synthesis question-answer pairs, which is kind of how you should be evaluating your RAG systems. In this way, I'm actually going, the idea of this little code base that you can all go and play with is that let's test your knowledge. Did you really read the document? Did you do the book? Is that book report really yours? It will quiz you back and see if you've understood. And that's kind of the fundamental principle of what we're going to work through. So what did I want to do? I wanted to build this knowledge arena. And I kind of realized that using these latest tools and technologies, I can kind of put it into two modes. Multiple choice, classic MCQs, which has an interesting challenge when you actually start building this out. So the goal that we're going to have is that we're going to have our anchoring long-form text, which in this case, and I have to admit, I haven't read the whole thing, but one of the things that Comply Advantage builds every year, so again, a little bit of a sales pitch for the company I work for, is they write a white paper on the state of financial crime every year. And this isn't a sales pitch. It's fundamentally going back to our customers in the sector and figuring out what are the challenges and how are people fighting financial crime with technology and what are people concerned about. But it's a 130-page PDF document. It's a comprehensive white paper. But I want to go in and maybe I want to read it, and maybe I want to make it as an engaging piece of activity. Okay, we send it out. How many people do really read these reports? Maybe we should just go with, okay, we'll try and see if you can answer the questions. And if you can't, maybe it drives you to go with, oh, I don't understand that. So you could click through and suddenly it will hopefully engage you. And we're trying to bring the human back into some of the systems. So classic MCQ, I want 4 options. You need to choose the right answer. But I also want it to then, if you get it wrong, point you to where you should have got the answer from. So again, it kind of could drive engagement. But I kind of figured somebody's going to be cocky. Somebody's going to say that's far too easy. So let's have expert mode, which now means let's go for, I'm just going to give you a text box and you can try and answer the question. Now let's see how well you can handle it when you can't try a random choice and just get 25% with no work and effort whatsoever on your score. And this is the document. And I mean, fundamentally, obviously, I've built it here with this complex document, but you could very easily reuse, and I'm kind of still playing with it in my own head, how to generalize out some of the coding principles I've done, because some of the stuff I've done, I've adapted specifically to handling complexities, but the key thing I wanted is something that has text, and it has pullouts, and it has graphics, and it has the sorts of things that we as human beings are happy to multimodally access. But 130 pages of that is not a trivial thing, and I can't plan, and I don't want to plan for the explicit structure of the document in its entirety. So stage 1 is I've got to get that text somehow into the system. So the way I went with this, and this is kind of the full end-to-end system that we're going to work through. We've got our PDF, right? I can find that out in the world. I believe there's been talks, well, I know that there have been talks, people have been talking about Docling. Inez gave a great talk about some of the Docling stuff last year again, highlighting you to go back to Pydata 2025 for flashbacks to other amazing talks. I'm going to use that as one of the, and I mean there are others out there which tackle them in different ways, and you keep seeing, I can't even keep up with the number of different PDF parsers because we all have these challenges. But fundamentally, we're going to use that to load our PDF, turn it into text in a manner that we can handle it. Who's come across DeepEval at all? Cool. DeepEval, I learned about, again, last year from Lena's talk where she was going through evaluations. One of the nice things when I was exploring DeepEval is that it has a RAG synthesizer component, and that's what we're going to leverage here to go and do this point of go and now review and find me facts and give me question answer pairs. Nominally, so that you can evaluate and test your system when you're doing development. Here it's going to be the foundational principle of some of the core of our system. To make my life easy, I'm actually then going to store my output. Now you could be putting this in a database. I'm just going to put it into a text file. And then finally, because I'm not a front-end developer, and as much as I was slightly tempted to go to Claude Code and say, please write me a front-end, I haven't been quite brave enough to do that when I said I'd do a live demo. Who's come across Marimo? Cool. Who's been converted that they no longer use Jupyter Notebooks and only use Marimo? Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm still wander through, but I like Marimo. The fact that I can go into app mode on Marimo and create my web interface, and in theory it's a nice, shiny looking piece, that's my shortcut. No JavaScript was injured in the making of this presentation. So the idea is fundamentally, I mean, this is not, like I say, a production system. I was iteratively building this out for this talk. So all of the components of the pipeline can be run independently. They are not just going to magically all run through end to end. But the common thread here is that I'm going to use this principle of IRAG. So every question from creation is going to carry or needs to carry its own evidence. And part of that is driven by a challenge that I do have at work. When we're going out and building our financial crime graph and bad actors, I need to be able to cite where I got every single fact from. I need to anchor every single piece of information in its origins in order for anybody to have trust in that they can ever reverse engineer where this stuff came from. So we're going to kind of bake it in from the get-go that when we go and process things, we're going to kind of record its coordinates in the system. So getting the chunks right, because if you don't start with good data, garbage in, garbage out. So first up, anybody who's experimented with RAG knows that you kind of start with your really basic one, which is I'm going to have a rolling window of X characters, and I'm just going to take my document. And then you've got to start worrying about, well, OK, so how much overlap am I going to have? And what's the actual size I want to take? How much context do, this gets complicated quickly if you think about it. And the problem is, and the reason it's complicated is because if you're just doing this dynamic, this window that is just fixed, I can suddenly land halfway through an information table, which means I've left the headers in one place and rows somewhere else. And it'd be hard enough for a human being to reverse engineer what the hell's going on there, let alone our AIs. So as much as you can go into LangChain and you can kind of temptingly go and just do this, it's going to screw with our data. It's going to shred information. And as a result, you're going to end up potentially when we're trying to create these questions answer pairs with garbled components, which are not useful. And what I wanted was something that I don't have to fundamentally human review. I will live with the fact that some things are going to be a bit sketchy on the other side, but I want this to be fairly sensibly built. So enter Docling. So Docling is now, as I said, one of these modern parsers that actually, the thing that I really like about it is it constructs this metadata layering of information in the system. So you get your node tree effectively of, right, this is the head, this is the document, this is a heading. Inside that heading, there's a text. Under that text, there's a table. Then there's all of these other components, and then you move to the next section heading. And so the goal here is that the human beings who've written the documents have already given us structure. They've given us contextual awareness that if it's under a section heading, it has relevance within that domain. Now, as much as multiple sections probably have cross-information, if I'm going to break anything up, that's what I kind of want to break it down to. Now, there is still the case that somebody may have written a really long section. So I do allow within the section that I will slide that window within a limit. But I'm also keeping the coordinates of where it is in the document to try and keep some of this structure, and therefore I can keep track of the pages. And this goes back to the index ranking of when I'm chunking and breaking it apart, I need to know where it exists and in what order, what came before it, what came after it, I can manage this now. So this is what this starts to look like. And if you look at the code, there's a function called getSemanticChunks, and this is pretty much the code that is in the function. And all we're doing is we find a section header, and then we start emitting that chunk. We kind of have this breakdown. Now, if it gets too long, we've got this max chunk size, which allows us to kind of still iterate over and to partition this up. But we're now going to get out for every chunk the header, the page number, what element type, that it was a table or it was something else, and then obviously the actual body of text that goes along with it. And this is just going to iterate through and break it all apart. The size limit is purely our safety flaw that something doesn't run away and we end up with something crazy happening. So solved. Nice easy bit. But that's, and to some degree, the semantic partitioning of documents, it's not a trivial problem. I mean, it's not a trivial problem in this instance because somebody already took the time of building a semantically relevant document up front. Like I say, they wrote section headings. So why wouldn't I reuse those? Why am I going to try and reinvent the wheel when somebody's put that effort? Now, if you're going to just dump all of the text of the internet in, good luck. That's going to be a harder problem because we know what an infinite number of monkeys on an infinite number of typewriters create. It's not the world's works of Shakespeare. We've had the internet for a long time now, and I haven't seen that randomly happen yet. So from there, though, we now want to construct our clean chunks into trustworthy questions. So we have one prompt, 6 constraints. Yeah, that's going to go crazy. And we've heard this before equally in the conference. If you ask your LLM to do too much, it gets confused, the same as any of us get confused. If I dump a load of tasks on you in one go, it's very easy to mix things up. Now, if you think about it, if I wanted to do an MCQ style question, for example, it can't be 20 lines long. As much as that could be a valid question to ask, I need something punchy and short, especially when it comes to the answer on the other side, that I need to be able to target something that's going to fit into my app. Equally, for the long form question, I don't want it to talk too long about the long form question, but I don't want it to be a one-sentence answer, because that's not much of a long form question if you're going to ask those texts. So what we find is that if you try putting it all in, options suddenly balloon into paragraphs. The correct answer by default, because I've said, go and give me 4 answer pairs. OK, well, the number 1 is probably nominally the correct answer, because I've said, oh, and then give me 3 fake answers. Well, that's not particularly good. Although still being engaged in universities, I would wonder how many students it would take to detect actually that if they just ticked A every time, they would still get full marks. I don't guarantee that right now. And so these are the things that you want to protect against. So what I actually do is break it apart into stages. And so what we have is we start with our chunk of text. We go in, and I'm using DeepEval to just get me a question and an answer. And I'm not going to constrain that function to scale it down. But from that question and answer, I then got multiple stages afterwards. OK, now this is the style and the format that I want. Can we recondense and put it into the specific framework for the multiple choice question versus a long form question? And then for the multiple choice, I then say, great, now that you know what the question answer pair here is, I'm going to give you the context back. Now give me 3 convincing incorrect answers that aren't correct. Because again, that's always the other problem that you've got, is if I just ask you to make up 3 new answers, who's ever been in an exam or something where you've known more information than the person asking the exam and realized that one of the alternative answers is a better answer than the one they've marked? Yeah. I remember going back and looking at a GCSE physics exam because people were complaining on the BBC News that it was too hard, and realized that actually the model answer was the wrong one. There was a better answer in the set, but no, you shouldn't expect the students to know that. But if the student was far too smart for their own good, they were now getting the wrong mark. So you've got to be prepared for these things. Equally, one of the interesting things that I had was anybody in the NVIDIA data designer talk the other day? I realized that their data designer looks really cool for doing this sort of synthesis. And I'm actually, I think it potentially has more flexibility for what I was trying to do here than I got with DeepEval. And so I want to go back, and I would highly encourage anybody else to go and give a look at that. The GitHub for the code base is there. I don't know anything other than the talk from yesterday or the day before. I can't quite remember which one it was in now, but obviously the talks will be up online soon for this year as well. So that allows us to now do this processing. And because, again, we've baked in our IRAG, we've got, as much as we've now done, created our question-answer pair, we know what text we gave it, and with that text, we'd kept the coordinates. So we know the page number, we know the section, and then we've generated from the text snippet, which means in this instance, I don't actually have to do the retrieval part of RAG. I know where everything came from. I'm not going to semantically search back for, oh, where did this question-answer pair get answered in the document? Because in this instance, I've taken control of the system that I want, so I can get a deterministic output. And it kind of goes, again, to some of the themes that we've been hearing is, it's not always about using the AI or using vectors or using these amazing technologies that we've got to solve literally every problem that's in front of us. Simplifies everything down, and it's because we thought about how we were going to architect it and structure it up front. I wanted to give this example, and this is kind of looping back to garbage in, garbage out. One of the questions that came back when I was evaluating and testing it out myself was, what is the organization's current stance on analyzing exposure to organized crime? I was like, it doesn't know anything about comply advantages, specific policies. Did that leak into the document somehow? And when it answered that the correct answer was actually no current analysis or future plans, I'm like, that really doesn't make sense. We're definitely trying to build exposure in financial crime. And then I discovered that this was the chunk. No, we do not do this currently and have no plans to do so. 1727942 what the heck was this? And what this was a plausible question, and this has gone out of order. That was the original form. It was a graphic which Unicode characters had gone through, had been sanitized out in a horrific way because of some of the built-ins. And it meant that what we'd done is we'd actually asked the sector what their plans were. And it's just like, this is a beautiful question that you could ask of, well, what percentage are prepared or not prepared to deal with organized crime? And because of the way I'd set it up, actually it was failing on me. So this diagnosis, it's OCR noise. Now, if you therefore go back in, and this is again about sanitizing and making sure you understand how to process the data, and it still got me thinking how you try and generalize this for some things. So yeah, I'm taking out fragments under 40 characters, stripping out nav strings, headers, footers, and trying to therefore make sure that, but a lot of it was still happily anchored in the structural components, but it was kind of like a good lesson learned. So now we're at marking of free text answers in real time. So if we're in the free text, the MCQs, I know what the right answer is. I've set it up that way. But we're in the free text component now. That's no longer straightforward. I can't in any way guarantee what words are there. Now, one of the things that we can do is we can kind of maybe give a marking rubric. We've got a model answer still has come out of the other end of this, but what you don't want to be doing is trying to do regexes and keyword matching, because if you're going to do that, actually you now need to go back to some kind of vector embedding, because you're going to need semantic similarity. You can't rely on somebody use the exact phrase, as much as we've all feared that in exams in the past of, oh my God, if I didn't use exactly that term. Having been on the other side as a lecturer, I know that there is a lot of leeway given of, do I think you understood what I was trying to get at? In which case, I'm going to give you as much credit for your thoughts as I can. Does everybody remember being told, if you don't know the answer, just dump down everything you think you know about the topic? This is why you do that. As much as, I have to say, one of the best answers given in one of my, the 1 year I was a lecturer and I had to write an exam for stellar evolution, I asked the question, what is the, I can't even remember the specific question now. What is the thin shell thermal instability in late stage evolution, and why is it important? And 50% of my students, I kid you not, as much as fair enough they followed that instruction, they wrote, it's when you have a thin shell and it's unstable. It's like, okay, nice try, but no, you don't get any credit for that. You just reworded the question back to me, and that did not actually add any new knowledge and insight. So, and this is the point, is you've kind of got to be really careful as to how, if you're going to automate this. So you can't, you could try things like fuzzy matching, you could try all of these things, but what you want is this semantic knowledge. And so this is where, okay, what I'm going to do is I want to try and take some control back again. So whilst I have a model answer, I did actually ask it to construct a marking rubric. For every question, you're allowed to earn up to 5 points. So these are the things, and I I mean, it has the example of cite to the source location. I actually re-edited that at one point, going with, I don't think it's really fair to say, please tell me what page number that you should have remembered that you read that on. That's a little bit excessive. But fundamentally, we're now into LLM-as-a-Judge territory, which again is the stuff that we're all talking about, is how do we bring these into the world that we gain our trust and confidence in how systems work. So what you get out is a score, which is fundamentally more of a confidence itself in how it's answered, which was more there for me to review rather than for a user, but it's then going to award up to 5 marks. And that is, it's going to check that it can only give up to 5 marks, and it should be, I even locked it in, I think, as pretty much integer value. So it's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. If not, it's a failure in the system. And again, it's introducing determinism, but it will also give you some reasoning. It will try and explain what its thoughts were about why it gave you the marks it gave you. And this is the prompt. Fundamentally, you can see there's the grading criteria have been put in. You have the question, the ideal response. You can see this is effectively a Ginger template, so that I can, again, store the data and load it back in. We've got the mark scheme. Any keywords, you can kind of still put a little bit of that stuff in. And then the candidate's actual answer comes in, and hey presto, out comes a score. And therefore, this is most of what the actual judge looks like. And again, to simplify and make this maintainable and adaptable and making it easier for me to iterate on, the prompt lives in a Ginger template, not in an F string embedded inside the system. And again, this is getting back to good practices. If you're going to productionize something with LLMs, you want to version your prompts as much as you want to version your code, because the prompts is your guidance. It is what you're fundamentally using to control the system. And as much as we all know to refine and experiment, you need to know which version got run at any given time, especially if you're going to change it next time because a new model came out, because we also know that models update, and actually the way you even have to write your prompt often will update with it. It was an interesting choice here. I want it to be fairly factual in its assessment. So let's keep the temperature low, but equally, I want it to be a little bit creative. It's meant to be thinking around, is this a good answer? Is this something that I want? So I'm never personally confident. Is there anybody in here confident knowing exactly what they're getting out with their temperature other than just using it as, this is a parameter I can just randomly set and see how happy I am with my answers?
For the latest models, you cannot set the temperature anymore because of the reasoning.
I mean, I think potentially in some of those is because you get to choose your tier of reasoning. Some of that is already baking in how much its stopping conditions is going through. But yeah, I mean, who knows what controls we're going to have on these different components. In this engine and the example I've set it up here, I'm actually using GPT 4.0. So I still had control of the temperature in this scenario. And I've kind of got a fallback here of baseline, mainly for me to know that it failed. As you can see, it's going to give a score of -1. That's not really, because I don't kind of want to give credit to somebody for, well, the score is -1, so I can indicate it. The person got 0 because I can't guarantee I should have given them marks. Do I automatically give them marks? I mean, this is a bit fun, so it's not such a worry, but you kind of want to have something that you know is my point, that the system failed out, mainly because I've run out of credits or the Wi-Fi has gone down. And this finally brings us up to the reactive UI in pure Python. Like I say, I'm not a front-end engineer. I wanted to get something that I could showcase to you all and to show to other people. And I've been having fun learning a bit of Marimo and playing with Marimo. I think it's got added benefits from a classic Jupyter Notebook, I have to say. As much as it's frustrating sometimes to not be able to redeclare the same variable, it's also better coding practices. And since I'm not a software engineer, it's probably a good thing I get forced to do some of these things now and again. But the challenge that I had with some of this, and again, it's in part because I'm not a software engineer, is because you're in an async run environment, actually keeping track of the state, because it's reactive and reloading all the time, was a few places where I have to admit Claude and anti-gravity came to my rescue of debugging out where I'd put things. So if you're going to go and use it, I would highly recommend you do, but I would also say be mindful of if you're allowing people to click and interact, you've now got to be careful of quite how you're updating the state and you're recording things. So with that, which I think we're pretty much exactly where I kind of wanted us to be, we're in the world where I can now actually show you this running. Fingers crossed. So I'm going to, no, that's the wrong window. Now, that's not very big, so let me just make that a little bit bigger for everybody. If I just go into the simplest form, so if I just ls this directory, so what we have, as I mentioned, is I have a data directory in here. And I've already actually generated a load of questions as part of the repo, which are up there, so you don't have to, if you just do the MCQ mode, you don't actually even have to spend any money or set up an API key because it's all pre-done for you to just have a look at. But you can see that we have a generated set, and in here then are those questions. So if I just, for the sake of, I really should have had Visual Studio Code for this piece, but never mind. So if I just do generated and do small sample quiz questions, you can see this is the sort of form that you've got. You've got the MCQ. The way this is actually set up at the moment is it will generate both MCQ questions and long-form questions. It's done. You can set how many of each you want to set based upon how much money you want to spend in the cloud. I have to say, this running on GPT-4 Mini, 4.0, sorry, I've not been burning through a lot of credits, probably maybe in all of the work, $3 in the past few months. So it's been relatively light, but that's because I haven't been generating thousands and thousands and thousands of questions or anything like that. And so you kind of can hopefully getting a glimpse of what it sort of looks like. But obviously what you really came here to see is if I now do UV run Marimo run apps, and to keep it simple, I've actually this was one of the challenges I actually had, was because of the way the app works. I was trying to put it into be able to switch between whether I'd have MCQ questions or long form questions, and I just ended up confusing the logic of what was loading and reacting, so I've actually set them up separately. We'll have a look at both of them. But here we go. And let me just make that a little bit bigger. So welcome to easy mode. And we can start our quiz. And I've set it up initially with just, again, this is configurable because I want to be able to get to the end. We're not doing a full 100 quiz question session right now. So what is a significant consequence of the rise in investment scams? Let's go with high monetary losses for victims globally. That sounds reasonable. There we go. And again, nice. And all of this is written in Python. I'll show it to you a little bit behind the scenes if you really want to. You get instantly your correct answer. You get your explanation. And again, it's even citing for you. But I was pleasantly surprised that I was able to get it to dynamically load the modal with the PDF and jump to the correct page for you. Trust me, that took a little bit of working. But that's kind of the point I wanted, because I wanted to have this interactive thing. You got something wrong? Here, let me show you and solve it for yourself, or figure out what should you know. And like I say, the goal here was, okay, I could probably pitch this maybe to the marketing department, that you can now upload this rather than just purely the PDF. But equally, if you want to give it out to a student who wants to self-test themselves on stuff they've been learning, they can now create, beyond just flashcards, something they can interact with. And when they get it wrong, we'll tell them where to go and look up the thing that they will help them reinforce that learning. So we go through. Next question. I'm just going to jump through, so we'll get them wrong as we go. Oh, hey, all of the above was actually a correct answer. Well, hey. See, and this is the problem of MCQs. I'm just randomly guessing. I'm not even reading the question, so I can't guarantee. What role does cryptocurrency play in transnational drug trafficking networks? Facilitate illegal drug sales? No, that's not. No, that can't be right. Covert transactions in illicit markets. I'm sure that, yeah, there we go. And as we can see, and just to prove that it doesn't just jump to the same page that I pre-rigged this, should be page 18. Yes, it's page 18. Well, hey, who knew it would actually work? And there we go. It's on illicit markets. Hopefully, I've convinced you. And then your final results. Compliance mastery, apparently. Who knew? And so, yes, you get your scores. You get a nice little bit of reward. You can review, because I think, if I've done this yet, if you hover over correct, well, on the wrong one, yeah, incorrect, correct answer, implement, so it will actually tell you equally in your summary. I didn't even realize I had download available. Yes, you can download your results if you really want to, because that is built into Marimo. Again, very handy. And then you can go back to the beginning. Now, if I quickly go back to the terminal and exit that one out, if I just show you if I don't do run, if I do edit, you will now see what that looks like, just to give you a glimpse. That it's not, okay, it's a decent, I mean, it's not that much code though is the point. And if you want to in this environment, you just toggle the app view and it condenses back down to your app mode. I won't run this one again just because I want to go back and show you the long form one. And no, don't want to do it in edit mode. I want to do it in run mode. So now we will do expert mode. And this will look pretty much the same, but now, okay. Discuss the potential ramifications. I haven't got a clue. I'm not actually a financial analyst. I'm the data scientist. But it probably means we need to spend more money on compliance to be a responsible financial institution. I'm sure that's what they're all thinking. And then submit my answer. And here's where I hope that the Wi-Fi is still, there we go, grading, it's thinking, please work. Ah, there we go, and that was pretty responsive. And unsurprisingly, that got me 0 marks. But it gives you your grading rationale. It gives you your ideal answer so that, again, you can pick up and learn. Gives you what you, this is a little bit cheeky. I'm giving you back the mark scheme, so you could really cheat on this side. But this was, again, and again, that show evidence will drop you back to the end of the piece. And on that note, I have one final slide to take you back to. Key things, layout matters. You want structure, you want semantic meaning in the segments of your documents when you're processing these things. If you're going to do auditability, anchor the data as soon as you can. If you can keep track of it in a deterministic way, you're going to have much more power. You don't have to then rely purely on vectors and semantics. As much as they're powerful, they're not always the thing that you want. And context is king if you want to answer your questions, as we all know. You want to prompt narrowly, constrain the context that you're injecting in, and then you will get some semblance of predictable outcomes. Docling, DeepEval, and Marimo are great tools. Highly encourage you to explore them. And there's the code in case, again, you still want it. Interestingly, if you like what you've heard, if you like the sound of Comply Advantage, we have open roles in London, Prague, and Lisbon currently. So feel free to follow those links through. And if you have any other questions, I'll be around for a little bit afterwards. So please come and talk to me. Thank you very much.